Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I am your host, Sam Fain, and I am not going to talk very long at all because I want to get straight to this interview with Eliza Taylor. She's delightful, and I think this is probably one of my favorite interviews that I've ever had the chance to do, which says a lot because I have adored the chance that I've had to speak to so many awesome people over the last year or so. But this one was just such a joy, and Eliza's great. I adore the character she plays, Hannah Carson on Quantum Leap. If you're coming here because you are a fan of Eliza's and you are not necessarily watching Quantum Leap, watch Quantum Leap. It's awesome. And there's just been so many great stories told over the course of this season in particular. You can catch it on Peacock. And of course, if you want more content, check out the page. There's lots of great interviews with some wonderful actors and writers and producers and directors of Quantum Leap, as well, of course, other things. And stick around, especially now, because over the next few weeks during the break between the mid-season finale and when the show picks back up again, hopefully late January, early February, there will be a lot of really cool content that has nothing to do really with Quantum Leap, that allows Fate's Wide Wheel to sort of just stretch its legs. And I'm really looking forward to that a great deal because Fate's Wide Wheel, it's film, TV, pop culture, of course, Quantum Leap. So check that out. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining along. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment below if you have anything you want to add, any questions, please do. I love the dialogue and the conversation. I've been really busy lately, so I haven't been able to respond to all of the comments, but certainly I see them. I like them. I love them. Thank you so much. Take part, be a part of the community and the fandom because it's a really, really, really great place to be. You, of course, can find Fate's Wide Wheel over on Instagram and Twitter/X. That's where most of the social media engagement is right now for the show. And there is a Patreon as well to help support the show. But I'm going to ask you a favor before you go over to the Patreon. This time of year especially, all year round, but this time of year especially, I think it is so important to try to help others out. So take a look around your community. See if there are any wrongs that you can set right. If you can donate your time, if you can donate your money, whatever you can do to help out. I think that is one of the most important things that we can do as human beings all year round, but again, especially this time of year. And if you're looking maybe at the world at large, I will always recommend the charities of the Trevor Project and Doctors Without Borders. I think both of those charities are incredible life-saving organizations, and they are very near and dear to me, and I support them personally. So any way that you can help out, any way that you can be a Dr. Sam Beckett or a Dr. Ben Song, go for it. All right, let's make the world a better place, and let's do it because it's the right thing to do. Now, if after all of that you still want to support this show, then by all means head over to patreon.com/fateswidewheel. You can sign up for any dollar amount and you will get access to everything over there, including some awesome behind the scenes videos charting JJ Lindell's process for creating the amazing art that he has done. And there'll be a lot of other really cool things in the coming weeks and months ahead. So stay tuned, patrons. Thank you so much for all of your support. I really, truly appreciate it. I am humbled by it, and it helps to make this show possible. I'm a stay-at-home parent and a struggling actor, so it's definitely you that are keeping the lights on as far as Fate's Wide Wheel goes right now, and I really, really, genuinely appreciate it. That's enough for me. Let's get this going. All right. Eliza Taylor is amazing, and I want to share this with you. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. It was just such a wonderful time, and we covered a variety of subjects in some interesting ways, I hope, and some ways that I hope that you find just as engaging as I did while we were having this conversation. So thanks for being here, and enjoy Eliza Taylor. Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm your host, Sam Fain, and I have the privilege of being joined by Eliza Taylor, who plays Hannah on Quantum Leap once again. Eliza, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Last time was so much fun, and I had a thrill getting to speak to you about the casting process and, of course, about like Secret History in particular. And you should know that is the most watched episode that I have on my YouTube channel from the past like year. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted to check that one out, and I'm thrilled that they did, because I thought it was a really wonderful conversation, and people are obviously responding to the character, and people clearly have an appreciation for you as well. So I'll just start off by asking, how does it feel to have that kind of love directed your way by the fan base?
Oh, it's a big relief. You always get a little bit nervous coming into an already established cast, and you wonder how your character is going to be received. But I've been really lucky, and it's been nothing but love, and I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I've said repeatedly on the show, and in the few interactions that I've been lucky enough to have with the people that work on the show, cast as well as producers and writers, is everyone genuinely just seems really lovely, really generous, and it certainly seems like, based off of some of your social media posts, like on Instagram and photos, that you're having a lot of fun with other cast members. How has that been? Like, kind of, especially coming off of a show that you were on for, like, I mean, how long did the 100 go? It was
I
like,
think we shot for 8 years, but it was seven
yeah, it's like
seasons.
9
Yeah.
seasons or something like that. So yeah, coming off of a show where you're clearly kind of embedded with a group of people, and then coming into a situation like this and making new friends, how has that been?
Oh, it's been awesome, honestly. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting, but I think I was pleasantly surprised by how much of a warm welcome I received. And um, there's something really special about being on that set. Like Quantum Leap, everybody who's there really wants to be there. And
Mm.
that's actually quite rare. I think it's just a really positive set, and everyone's genuinely excited about what they're doing, and
Yeah.
it's infectious.
I love hearing that. And again, it's definitely the vibe that I've gotten from, the conversations that I've had with folks. Um, but of course, I do have to ask, speaking directly about Nomad, was there any jealousy over the fact that you got to go to Egypt and some people did not?
um, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there was. Because hello, like it's not every day you get to, go to one of the what is it? Seven wonders of the world. I feel like
Yeah.
yeah. It
Yeah.
was insane, and I was just I felt so lucky.
Yeah.
And also kind of like I was in a dream. Like it didn't feel real. It was only 5 days that we were there, and
Wow.
it when I got back, I went, did that actually happen?
Well, actually, that leads me to a great question. What was the schedule like for you? Because I imagine, I mean, obviously travel, time change, there had to be some sort of like jet lag involved with all of that. But at the same time, you have work to do. So what did that schedule look like once you got to Egypt?
I was really lucky. I had a full day when everyone else had to go to set the next morning after the long flight. I had the day to kind of recalibrate and relax and prepare. So for
Nice.
me, like my work was a little bit lighter, but for everybody else, man, like the crew for Ray and Caitlin, they were in it. They were just 12 hours a day, maybe
Yeah.
more, for the whole time we were there.
Now, I think Dean had mentioned that it was a fairly small group that went over there, and that there were a lot of local, crew that were used.
Mm-hmm.
How did that work as far as like integrating, the people that were already there and coming in with this small team from Quantum Leap to get this job done?
It was actually fascinating. It was
Yeah.
really interesting to see how the locals do it. It's a
Mm.
very different vibe. Because there are so many external factors, like there's a million people racing by on mopeds and camels, and there's so much foot traffic because especially when we were shooting in the ancient markets,
Mm.
that the group the crew, words are hard, the crew that were local to Cairo were just, they were so quick and so loud and so like passionate and
Mm.
just like getting everything locked down so we could get a take done. Um, I think we were all kind of blown away. It was just a really like, it wasn't anything we'd ever seen or experienced before.
That's so fascinating to me. I actually, it's so funny. I just finished reading a biography on Bruce Lee, actually. And at one
Mm.
point in the book, they talk about the film crew for Enter the Dragon was, kind of made up of a majority of Hong Kong locals, but there were a lot of like Hollywood folks that were brought in as well. And just kind of the way that interaction occurred and how it was a little difficult at first. And it's different. I mean, obviously with the movie, it's a longer shoot, but like it was really fascinating the way that the group kind of meshed together and appreciated, some of the
Yes.
differences. And so I really, as soon as Dean mentioned that, we didn't have time to really talk about it. And obviously, unfortunately, he couldn't be there because of the writer's strike. But I was very curious just to, get an idea of what that would be like, because it is really interesting to, mix these two teams that haven't necessarily worked together before in an environment
No.
that is wholly different from the environment that you're used to shooting in. So any kind of interesting stories or anything that stands out to you that happened? I know it's been a while now, unfortunately. but anything that stands out to you as far as like any interesting or funny stories on the set?
Oh, I mean, I think it was just for me, like, and it does feel like a lifetime ago now, but it was just a sensory overload for all of us. I think
Mm.
we were just, and one thing that was interesting is I found it really hard to retain my dialogue, to remember my lines. I
Oh,
think that,
really?
the hustle and bustle, the heat, the new smells, all of
Mm-hmm.
these like factors kind of, I was like, do I still know how to act? Like, what's going on? I'm sure jet lag had a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah. As
But
someone who's seen the episode, I can certainly say yes, you did remember
oh,
how to
thank you.
act.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But yeah, it was just, oh my goodness. It was like a fever dream. Just
Yeah,
wild.
yeah. Had you ever been to Egypt before?
No. No, it was on my list, absolutely, but I never thought that I would go in this capacity, and like being able to stand at the foot of the Sphinx was
Oh,
just insane,
yeah.
and like I wasn't shooting that day, but I asked production if I could just tag along so I could see it, and it was
That's so cool.
amazing.
Yeah, my wife's been. I've never been, but she went when she was a teenager. Um, did you get to
Cool.
do any? I mean, I obviously mentioned like tagging along, but did you get to do anything fun while you were there apart from shooting the episode, or was it pretty much just work and sleep?
It was work and sleep up until the last night when we wrapped, we all had dinner together, which was really lovely. And I think,
Yeah.
everybody needed to blow off some steam and and relax a little bit. So we had a beautiful dinner on the rooftop of the hotel, and that was really special.
Yeah, oh, that does, yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
When you first got this, well, actually, let me go back just a second. When did you first know that you were going to be going to Egypt for the episode? Is that something you like knew right away?
Uh, Sam, I thought it was a joke. I didn't think it was real. I was like, I was like, oh, that you mean green screen, right? You mean we're
Right,
going to
right.
be doing a whole lot of VFX. Um, and yeah, it wasn't until my agents called me about a week beforehand that they said, "Yep, you're going. They're booking your flights, and we need to make sure that you've got all the safety and travel information." And I was like, "What?"
Oh my gosh. That's wild. It's funny because Dean had mentioned when Martin first kind of threw the idea at him about doing an episode on location internationally, that Dean was at first kind of like hedging a little bit and looking at locations that were like easy or cheap to shoot in, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
Martin was like, no, 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 think big. And so Dean was like, okay, let's go to Egypt. That's fantastic though. I can imagine being told that and and yeah, not thinking it was quite real.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought they were having me on. I was like, that can't be right.
Surely not. um, the when you first got the script, and we talked a little bit about this during Secret History, just because there are those time jumps for Hannah in between, the episodes we've seen her thus far. Um, was there any information that you kind of immediately drew from the script that allowed you to kind of, even just in your head, even if you didn't get too specific, hyper specific with it, to sort of fill in the blank of the time that had passed from Secret History to the time that Nomad is set? Because I think it's about, was it 6 years again, 5 or 6 years, from like 55 to
Yeah,
61?
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah, I think 6 years. Do you mean for what like Hannah's been up to in that time?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, I mean, there wasn't anything in particular. I mean, I know that from Secret History and from Ben making that discovery about her boss that she would have gone on to do some pretty incredible things that she wouldn't have otherwise. But
Yeah.
I just always assume, like the particulars I don't know, but I always assume that she's just kicking goals, like just kicking ass,
Mm,
really.
for sure. Absolutely.
Just like the first female to do this and this and this and this in her field.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that seems to come across, especially with the fact that, I mean, now Dr. Hannah Carson, and being
Mhm.
here for this conference, in Cairo, it does seem like a big deal. I mean, contextualizing it in the '60s, it's not like, unfortunately, we don't have a long list of women that were that notable, and that active in that
True.
field. So I kind of mentioned this question, and I got somewhat of a fun, playful, coy response from Dean and Drew when I asked it. So I don't expect any spoilers whatsoever. But do you have a desire to explore some of that lost time, that time that we don't see Hannah, whether on screen, or is there any, are there any questions that you've asked along the way to kind of help to fill in those gaps? And
Yeah.
even thinking about the future of it, as we go forward in the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because, like, at the beginning of uh, shooting, when I got the role, Dean and Martin were very gracious and gave me a lot of information about sort of Hannah's overall arc throughout the season,
Mm,
and so I thought I had a really good idea of what she was up to, how Ben has impacted her life and her path, um, and then uh, I can't say much, but things have changed a little bit, and I'm reading the scripts and going, oh, okay. Um, they've obviously like made some little diversions from that original plan, and it's really cool for the better, I think.
yeah.
But I think it's given me a lot more insight into what she's been up to.
Mm, very cool. 'Cause that was something that, I've been thinking a lot about over the past couple of weeks, honestly, because there's definitely a story there to be told. And I think
Mm,
it's wonderful. Not everything has to be shown on screen. I think that
yeah.
that helps to engage the viewer even more. But there is kind of potential, like, just richness to what has happened to Hannah in that in between time.
Hmm.
Um, Now, one of the things over the course of Nomad, obviously, is that it becomes very clear that, you know, Hannah and Ben aren't just attracted to one another, they're in love.
Yeah.
And, it's done really beautifully. I mean, I think Dean's script is fantastic. You and Ray are wonderful. The direction, I mean, some of the cinematography, in particular, the scene where the two of you are kind of like on the, I don't want to say balcony. It's not really a balcony, but standing at the window. There's
In the
just this
window.
really beautiful
Oh, the
quality
light
to
in
it.
that scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The
Beautiful.
lighting is so wonderful. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges, perhaps, of sort of building that relationship in the context of knowing that, you get this finite amount of time, especially, I mean, really focusing on Secret History, because in Closure Encounters, sure, there's a little bit of that, meet cute quality or whatever, but there's
Yeah.
not much else there. And then in Secret History, it starts to ramp up. But then coming into Nomad, it's like, this is a big story. It's not just this little
Yeah.
romance. Like, this is love.
Yeah. I mean, I think last time we chatted, Dean said it really well. He said that, and that really actually what he said during this podcast really helped my process with Hannah. He
Oh.
said, that we've all had that romance, that whirlwind, swept off our feet romance that we know isn't going to last forever, or that we know we only have a finite amount of time in. And when I think about that, it's actually a really relatable story between Hannah and Ben, even though it's in this impossible, sci-fi world.
Right.
It's still a tale as old as time. Star-crossed lovers, all of that. It's beautiful. So yeah, I think in a lot of ways that actually really helped me go, okay, there's this beautiful, they're in this beautiful romance. They completely fully accept that it's not going to be, and like Hannah says, I'll be lucky if I get to spend a week with you over the course of my life,
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Like, how
Yeah.
romantic. And they're just making the
Right.
most of it,
Yeah. Well, and I love that line too, because I mean, Tim, what you just said, I'd be lucky. The notion that she is considering this a gift and not looking at it as some sort of tragedy, that
Right.
oh, I
Yeah.
only have this amount of time. and
Yeah.
and there's something inspiring and hopeful about that I think, the message is to appreciate things a little bit more.
Yes.
um
Be present.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and it's, the over the course of the episode, of course, there's this idea right from the beginning that, okay, we've only got a finite amount of time, let's spend it together. Hannah's going to help out. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but then things kind of take this, this turn, and it looks like Ben might be staying there.
Oh,
Because
yeah. Oh, my
yeah.
gosh. I forgot about that for a second.
So I'm curious as to, like, especially for you, and just, putting yourself in Hannah's headspace for a moment, like that, that small window of time when it looks like Ben might be sticking around, what do you think that's like in Hannah's mind? And is she able to start to, like, create a future? Is it still kind of that appreciate the moment, take this as it comes, and we'll figure it out as we go along?
Yeah, I think deep down, Hannah intuitively knows that it's, it's not his destiny. And she says that, but um, it was actually written that she's trying to fathom it. She's trying to imagine him staying forever, and it's wonderful, but she just has this feeling that he's got to go. He's got to continue
Yeah.
on his cosmic mission. Um, and she was right.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that when the phone rings, there's this really wonderful moment. And even before you pick it up, the viewer can, I mean, I certainly could tell Hannah knows what's coming.
Good. I'm glad that came across, because I wasn't sure because I knew it was there. It was in the script where she just has a beat and goes, something's about to happen. I don't know what, but you know, um, and then when I watched it, I was like, I hope that the viewers will get that moment. So I'm very happy
Yeah.
to hear that it came across.
Yeah, I certainly thought that it did. I loved, kind of, there's this moment of hesitation, and it wasn't, not to get too, like, actor speak or whatever, but it's kind of like, when the director's like, oh, don't play the end, just try and play the moment or whatever. It didn't feel like you're playing the end. Like, it didn't feel like you were like,
That's
oh, I'm gonna, pick up the phone and know exactly what's
yeah.
happening. But there was, like you're saying, there's a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of doubt, a little bit of question of, like, what could this be? And now I thought it was a really wonderful moment. And then there's, like, this, when you hand the phone off to Ben, it was I think the thing that really pulled at my heart even more was that there wasn't any like hesitation, that there wasn't any, and it fed into those earlier lines about Ben's destiny so well, because it was a
Yeah.
moment of just sort of like, no, this is who he is. And like, I took away from that, that's who he is, and that's why Hannah is in love with him, you know.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah.
um so those moments of being able to kind of like, again, you know, there's stuff that's left to the imagination as far as the, you know, the nature of all of the conversations that are taking place, but there is this wonderful idea that Ben and Hannah get like a few uninterrupted hours together, as opposed to, you know, an observer always around, or having to focus on a mission, or being split up for this or that. Did you
Hmm.
and Ray have an opportunity to kind of talk about, you know, what might have been, you know, what Ben and Hannah were doing or talking about, or you know, whatnot during that time?
Yeah, we actually shot it.
Oh,
we shot,
really?
we shot a lot of what that, of like, there was this beautiful montage that, I mean, probably given needing to cut down on time, didn't make it, but of them, just having really deep, beautiful conversations and kind of cutting in and out of them, holding hands and sitting with each other and holding space for each other. And it was really beautiful. When we shot it, I don't know how it turned out. I didn't make it in, but it was just, yeah, there was a lot of like, of Ben discussing his relationship with Addison, and Hannah talking about how she first fell in love with science. And so it was really fun to explore that. And there was a lot of sort of improvising as well in there that, we laughed a lot, as well as, got to have these really beautiful emotional beats.
Mm. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's the type of stuff that I yearn for, you know, in like a physical release of the show on like Blu-ray or something. Is like, give us some of that
Yeah.
stuff, because you know, the first
Deleted
season was fairly
scenes.
bare bones, but like, yeah, give us the deleted scenes. Let us see some of that stuff. One of the things that's interesting, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but in the script, the final line of the episode, Ben says, "I love you too," back to Hannah. But in the finished episode, he doesn't say it. Like, I no, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't actually hear him say it in the final scene, because I was
Oh.
waiting for it. Um, Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm gonna have
No,
to like go back and
maybe I
rewatch
just
it,
heard it when I
edit this
watched it
out.
because that's how we did it on the day. That's so
Right.
funny.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe it's, and sometimes, you know, very rarely, but sometimes the screener that we get is a little different from what's aired. So
Hmm.
perhaps it's in the air version. I don't know.
I don't know
Um,
either. We're gonna
yeah.
find out.
Right. But no, I that was a moment where, um, again, it was, even if it is unsaid, and I could be completely wrong and be made to look a fool, but even going unsaid, I mean, it's so palpable. So in you know, building that moment, in particular that final scene, you know, at first you know, Addison is there, and then she leaves to kind of give Ben and Hannah some time. And um what's your process like for a moment like that? Because there is, I mean, there's this level of intimacy and vulnerability, and
Hmm.
you know, it's just a really, really beautiful, tender moment. um how do you approach a scene like that?
They're my favorite scenes, for sure. Like
That's awesome.
that's my jam. I love, I love, I don't know, I love that there's, like you said, there's intimacy, there's vulnerability, there's something really bittersweet about it. And my process is pretty. I mean, when it's written so well for you, it's very easy. It's just, you know, good scripts are easy.
Yeah, yeah.
It was all there, and and also having Ray as such an incredible scene partner. We didn't really need to do all that much to
Mm,
make it feel good.
yeah.
So
Ah,
yeah.
I love hearing that. I've told this story a couple of times recently, some of the work that I'm involved in right now, but that's neither here nor there. But there's this wonderful story about Jack Lemmon working with Billy Wilder for the first time, and Jack Lemmon comes on the set. He's got this scene. He does the scene. Billy Wilder yells "cut," and and looks at him and says, "Okay, that was great. Next time, less." They do it again. Cut, next time less, and this goes on like 9 or 10 takes, and then finally
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon looks at him and says, "If I do any less, I'm not going to be doing anything at all." And Billy Wilder goes, "Now you're getting it." And I just love that,
That's
because I
great.
think it's true. It's like, it's so easy to find yourself in those moments to like want to do something and push for something, and the truth is
Yeah.
you just have to be, you just have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I love that.
I love hearing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that story so much.
I'm gonna keep that one.
What what's your favorite part about being an actor?
Oh my gosh. I I love it so much. I don't know. It's funny because I've been doing it for nearly 23 years now.
Mm,
Um so I've been doing it since I was 11, and uh I have the same feeling on set now that I did when I was 11, my first day on
mm,
set. It was like I was home. And there's something about the collaboration, all these incredibly talented people working together to make something great. Um, there's just this amazing sense of camaraderie. There's so much skill. There's so much talent. There's just, it's like this, hive of energy, and everybody working towards a common goal. So I think if I had to boil it down, my favorite thing is being in that environment, is being on set, and being a part of that.
mm. Yeah. No, I love that. I understand.
Mm.
Um, do you, and I understand it's hard. I mean, sometimes questions like this, you just sort of feel like, I don't know how to answer that. But I am curious, do you feel like there's one or maybe two really valuable lessons you've learned along the way, especially having done this for 2 decades? Do you feel like there's something along the way that you feel like that helped me become a better actor?
I think for me, yes, there's been many moments, but the hardest part for me is uh, um, being in the public eye. That's
Mm,
really
mm,
tricky. Um, and when I started, there wasn't social media. There wasn't like this direct line of, communication, good or bad. Um, so when I started on the 100, that was really tricky. And what people were saying really affected the way that I was performing, because
mm,
I was taking it all on, like, okay, I'm not good enough like this. They don't like it when I frown, when I have these lines here, So all of these things that I was trying to change about myself, um, actually was really detrimental to my to my acting.
mm-hmm.
So I mean, the biggest lesson for me is to get offline. Don't read comments. Don't. And it sounds like, I don't know if it sounds silly, um, but as soon as I did that, my sense of self came back. The real world that I was interacting with on a day to day basis became much more important than what was on this.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I was present again. And I hadn't felt that since I was a kid. And that for me, um, is just the most important thing. Like, what's going on the internet is not real. I mean, it might be if I look at it, but when I'm interacting with my day-to-day life, that doesn't actually matter.
yeah, yeah. I love that, and I think it's very difficult, these days to really kind of live by that, because it is
Mm.
so ever present, and we are so connected, and it's how, you know I think that sometimes with all of the technology and all of the ways that we can now be connected, um, we don't always focus on the right things.
Mm.
And to me, when I get to experience the way that people are sharing with one another, in these really positive, sometimes very vulnerable, honest, genuine ways, that I look at that and I say, oh, that's what this is for. And then when
Mm.
and then when you see the other side of it, and the echo chambers and the anger and the fear and and everything else, it's just sort of like, ooh, this is what we should have stopped and had a talk about 15 years ago before we
Yes.
ever got to this point. Um, but I completely understand that, and I think it's very difficult. I would imagine, especially because for me, I look at acting, and obviously there are inherent differences in what I do, doing like storefront theater in Chicago and that sort of stuff, and what
Oh,
you're doing
cool.
on a larger scale. But like, to me, the wonderful thing is that ultimately you're getting the opportunity to share, to share a story, to share a piece of yourself,
Yeah.
with an audience. And I think that there are things that can get in the way of that. And you mentioned like online comments, and I know for stage actors, like it's the reviews. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, I
obviously
bet.
if you're on Broadway, like you'll get online
Yeah.
comments too. But yeah, I mean, the reviews, and it's so hard to be backstage and know that, like, oh, somebody put the review up on the board, and I'm just like, I'm not going to read it. I don't want
Well,
to
you
read
can't
it. Like,
unread
I
it
know,
is the problem.
right, exactly. And then,
Which
and it's like somebody will walk by, and it's so funny. I remember I was like fresh out of college, and there was a review, and somebody was like reading the review, and I just kind of like walked by it. They go like, hey, this reviewer compared you to Marlon Brando. And I was like, what? I was like, that's amazing. And then I go read the review, and they were comparing my physical appearance to Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. And I was like, oh no. It's like, that's not the comparison that I was looking for. and so and so it's
Oh,
so it's
no.
really hard, because there's like you have this desire to like,
You do. It's
what, yeah,
human, you know.
right, but you
Absolutely.
do have to kind of tune it all out to work in an honest manner. I mean, is that what
Oh,
you
yeah.
found?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went through the whole like um I got Botox because I thought
Mm,
people didn't like looking at my face anymore.
mm,
I tried to lose a bunch of weight and I just ended up actually gaining more because I was, I'd be starving myself and then binge eating. And it was just like all these little comments. And you can read, the problem is you can read so many positive ones and it's just these little negative ones dotted throughout that you pick up on and
yeah.
go and latch onto and go, oh gosh. Um, and and so I went through all that in my 20s, and I'm so grateful to have um, come out of that, come out the other
Yeah,
side, and just realize that all of that stuff is just chatter, and it really doesn't apply to my real life. Um,
right.
Yeah, and I love my body now, and I love my face, and I'm
I'm
good with
glad to hear
how I am
that.
now. Whatever comes out on screen is, it's performative. It's the way it's meant to be. It's the character,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, I think one of the neat things about Quantum Leap, we talked a little bit about this in Secret History, is that you get to have so many different looks.
yeah.
The look in Nomad obviously is a big difference from what we've seen. What did you think about that? You have kind of the bouffant kind of hair, and
Oh,
it was definitely, I mean, it was obviously, it's period appropriate, and you see it, and how did that feel like, again, the growth of this character and some of the stuff that we don't get to see, but then it's manifesting itself in this way that not only is telling us something about Hannah, but it's also telling us about when we are as well. So what did that feel like when you're getting that hair? Was that a wig, or was it your real hair?
that was both.
Okay, okay.
There were pieces that were not my hair at all. Um, and then there was some of my real hair, but it was amazing. I mean, it's been my dream to like since I was a kid to do something period, like either 40s, 50s or 60s. And now I've done all three in the space of a year. And
Yeah.
it's so much fun. It's everything that I thought it would be. I love it. And every new period that we do, I'm just like, bring it on. I want it to, I do a lot of research on hair, makeup,
Nice.
nails. I always try to look at the nails of that era and that year in particular. And perfumes. And I just really try to load up on that, all that stuff so that I can go in and feel and look the part.
Yeah. Oh, I love that kind of, it's funny sometimes the little things that you can pick up on that affect you. And it's the
Mm.
reason why I think it's important, right? To kind of explore as much of it as you can, because you never know what's going to feel like that little key that unlocks a new, new pathway and a new, your new way into whatever experience that you have. Was there anything on this particular episode that really kind of felt like that sort of like turnkey moment?
Aesthetically
Sure.
speaking,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
even if it wasn't, even if it was something else.
I mean, for me, I think the costume and the beehive has got to be what really got me there.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But I mean, there was something on this episode that that I was kind of grappling with, which was, do I age her up vocally a little bit?
Mm.
Because Hannah's like, she speaks up here a lot of the time. And I was like, do I bring her voice down to my sort of register for, her late 30s or I think that's what she is in the 60s. So I played with it a little bit. I did lower it a little bit. And I think there's one scene in particular where you really hear it. And then I got scared and I went back up to hi Hannah. I was like, that doesn't sound like Hannah anymore. It was really interesting. And I think I overthought it, and it ultimately just went, no, that's actually, I reeled it back in. I went, that's just, it takes away a lot of her charm. So it was interesting to learn that over the course of this episode.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that is fascinating. Do you find in the dialect work, because obviously one of the humorous moments of the episode is that Hannah affects like a Southern accent at one point,
Yeah.
to when she's helping Ben out. But in kind of doing that sort of dialect work, is there any particular method that you use, like IPA or anything like that, or is it just working with a dialect coach? Is it more of an auditory thing where you've listened and you've picked certain things up? What kind of is your process for getting that dialect? And I find it really interesting that you said, like, kind of pitching things down a little bit almost took you a little, it took you away from the character.
Mm-hmm.
So, at what point do you kind of, maybe say, okay, maybe this is, right, that her voice would sound a little different, but it takes
Mm-hmm.
me too far away, and I want to, maintain that, that connection with the character. So I'm kind of curious as to what your approach to that type of work is like.
Trial and error, baby. I just I thought when I was preparing for the episode, I did work with my dialect coach. But you can work on things to a certain point, and then you kind of have to throw it all away so you can be in the moment and not just thinking about words.
Sure.
Which definitely happened with my Southern accent because I completely forgot how to do it. But I think that's kind of that it works for the character anyway, that she's obviously
Totally.
not Southern.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. I've never played a character over, the course of her life before. So to play her several years apart and, getting older, and it's something that like I said, I think I overthought. and now I'm just kind of going with the flow. I've
Mm-hmm.
found, like, in the next few episodes, I think I've found a more mature Hannah, without like messing with this too much.
Sure, sure. Oh, I mean that makes sense to me, and I think that seeing the way that the characters run it, and like you said, I mean, you can attribute a lot of this to the writing, but seeing the way that the character has grown over the course of these episodes is we see someone who obviously in Closure Encounters has some agency. Like
Mm,
she's willing to kind of help out, right? Like
mm,
is like I'm here, I'm going to help out. I'm an engaging human. And then, of course, in Secret History, again, we see someone who is, partnering up with Ben, but not necessarily on equal footing, especially
mm.
because, for part of the episode, she doesn't necessarily know for certain that it's Ben. I think that there's a hint that we get that Hannah knows something about, something's different about this guy.
Yeah.
Um, but in this episode, I feel like we get even more agency from Hannah, that we see a Hannah that is now on equal footing with Ben in almost every way, to the
Mm,
point where she kind of instigates some of the action that's pivotal to the episode, and, in particular with changing the place of the bug and that sort of stuff. What's it feel like to kind of have gone on this journey so far and find this character that now really, again, is on equal footing with Ben, with our lead character, as opposed to being like the partner or I don't want to use this as a pejorative, but the sidekick in Closure Encounters,
mm,
and
mm.
now is really just like, yeah, I mean, is just as much of the hero of the piece in some ways as Ben is.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love the evolution of Hannah, in that regard. Like, we first meet her in her early 20s, and she's clearly brilliant, but still finding her footing. And then you see her again, and she's really kind of a woman now and come into her own in the 1950s. And now she's caught up in age to Ben,
Right.
by the 60s. And so she's really come into her own, and she's quite fearless. Like, sometimes I read the script and go, geez, she's gonna, like, I would never. I would be like, I'm gonna hide over here, you do all the work, bye.
Right.
That's me though. Hannah she's fearless, and it's just awesome. There's
Yeah.
much more of that to come too.
Where do you, without spoiling anything, where do you think that comes from, that fearlessness in Hannah?
I don't know. I have to attribute it to just um, her her unique view on the world, and like, she doesn't. It's almost like she doesn't see life as um, she doesn't see this as her only life or something. Like, it's like she's been here before and she'll be back, and so she's enjoying it, with all the danger and adventures that come with it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I know that the relationship between Ben and Hannah's existence in Quantum Leap has been compared to like Time Traveler's Wife or to River Song and Doctor Who, but those
Hmm.
never sat right with me. And I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and I appreciate that storyline a great deal. But for me, I kind of hit on something recently that I thought, like, this makes a little bit more sense to me, and I appreciate it in a way, even though it's obviously has its differences. But it almost reminds me a little bit of like Peggy Carter and Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because there's this. It's
I
okay.
know it.
I'll give you a capsule
Okay,
overview.
great.
But
Please
like
do.
the wonderful thing that happens is, like, when Captain America disappears, is that Peggy continues on as this heroic character, doing these heroic things. And one of the things that's got me so interested in what Hannah's doing kind of in the off time, if you will, is
Mm,
because I feel like there's got to be this pull for her. Like, I don't I don't necessarily see the only adventures that Hannah is having are with Ben. Do you feel
yeah,
similarly to that?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Nice.
don't. I like that she's not. waiting around, and it's very clear from the get-go she hasn't been waiting around. The next
Mm,
time we see her, she's achieved a lot. And
yeah.
then again, in Nomad, like, she, of course, she would love to, spend endless time with Ben, but she's not, she's not wasting any time. She's off. She appreciates the time she has with him, and then she's off on her own adventures, I believe.
Yeah. So yeah, at the risk of getting like too spoilery, there's some stuff that I really want to ask, but I won't. But one thing that I'm interested in, just because, kind of like what Dean was saying about love and talking about those whirlwind romances, and what you just said about, Hannah living her life. Do you think that because of the way that the relationship, with Ben works, are you, at least in your mind, regardless of what happens on the show, open to the possibility that Hannah could still have other relationships in the absence of Ben? Or do you see it as being like she's in love with Ben and that's all there is to it? Can you answer that? If you can't answer it, I understand.
In my mind, I think I think in the way that she continues to live her life to the fullest, that yes, it's definitely a possibility that she'll. I don't see her, waiting around, but I also don't see that as changing her deep, deep love for Ben. You
Yeah.
know, I think
Yeah.
that will always be, and she knows it. But there's obviously, she doesn't know when she's going to see him again. So, or
Right.
if she's going to
Right.
see him again. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I appreciate that. I think that it's a wonderful, I mean, even if it's just subtext, even if it's something that most people don't think twice about or whatever, but I do think that there is this wonderful commentary just on kind of, to borrow a phrase from David Bowie, modern love, because we, so often there are these traditional, structures that are set up of like, this has to be what it is, or it's not love. And I just think
Mm,
that that's unfair. I mean, people are different. And I don't think that if Hannah were to have, relationships in the intervening years, she's not seeing Ben, that doesn't diminish
it
her love
doesn't.
for Ben.
Not at all.
So yeah, I like that. I like
And you
the
should.
idea of that. Yeah.
I do too.
Um,
And I think it's really, that's why one of the reasons I love this character. I think she's so well written, and there's a maturity about her and the way she approaches life and love that is really beautiful.
yeah. Well, it's one of the things too in the course of this episode, because I want to talk about Addison, because you and Caitlin get to share the
Mm,
screen in a very interesting way. But one of the things I love about the episode is that Addison and Ben both say "I love you" to one another.
hmm.
And obviously the context is different from the way that they said that in season one. But
Right.
it again, it's that reminder that I, Dean said this in the interview that I had with him just a couple of days ago, that's going to air kind of in conjunction with this one, that, love is infinite, that there's no
Mhm.
reason why we shouldn't look at love as being infinite. And so I love this idea that, like, we can have love from more than one person, right? Like, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
just like that narrow view.
Yeah.
Um,
And isn't that just the truest thing? I mean, we've all been in relationships that have changed us for the better, um, some for the worse.
yep.
But in terms of, in terms of that, you wouldn't go back and change even if it was painful or even if there was loss, because it's made you who you are today. I
Yeah.
think that's very true of Ben and Addison's love. I think it's very true of Ben and Hannah's love, and
Well, I
Hannah and
always
Addison's budding love.
Oh, clearly. But I think that that's one of the things I say this frequently about artists. I think that the freedom to fail is so incredibly important. And I don't think that that's just for artists. I think that that's true
Mm.
in life. We have to just have the freedom to fail, and it's okay to fail. And I know that, that in a lot of societies across the globe, failure does not seem like an option, just culturally, and it's not approved by society. But I think that it is important to experience that because, like you said, it makes you who you are, and it gives
Hmm.
you the opportunity to grow.
Mm.
Speaking of growth, as you mentioned, there's clearly something going on here with Addison and Hannah. Uh, I love it's just it's so wonderful, and it's something that obviously is fairly new to the show in a lot of ways, even going back to the original series. The opportunity to have, our leaper Ben interact with someone he's on the leap with, as well as the hologram, and then
Mm-hmm.
they get to kind of interact as well, but in a unique way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about playing those scenes? Because I think that there's got to be a temptation to maybe go a little like towards slapstick, right? There's there
Yeah.
or
I think I
whatever.
watching the episode, I think I boarded on slapstick a couple of times. I went into it a little too much, like, Addison, where are you? But it's really tricky. It's tricky when
Yeah.
beautiful Caitlin is standing right there and you can't look at her. And you just want to look at her. Stunning. So it's, I think there's a fine line, and I was finding it in that episode, and it's, it's evolved a lot more since then, which I can't talk
Mm,
about, but
sure.
it was something different for all of us. And yeah, I think we were finding it in this episode.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Honestly,
Oh,
I
good.
thought, yeah, because again, it's something new, and I appreciate anytime we get the opportunity to kind of just explore, something different, and go to a new place that makes sense, especially in the
Mm,
context of this episode. Um, the there's obviously a lot of humor to those scenes, and in
yeah.
particular, kind of the game of telephone that gets played from like Addison saying something to Ben saying it to you.
I
And
love
there's the
that scene.
beautiful, yeah, the beautiful woman part. What was like filming that, and in general, I guess you could talk about filming those scenes, but that specific scene, with the idea you can't see or hear Addison, she could see and hear you, Ben stuck in the middle. What's that like?
It was really fun. It was really fun, and we really got to play on the humor of that because it's so awkward for Ben. It is just so clearly incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
His two worlds colliding, um, and he did it beautifully. It was really fun.
Nice. Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
it comes across. And I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about this episode in general. I mean, it feels visually, there's this really wonderful cinematic quality to it.
Mm.
I think the location shooting, and, Chris Grismer as director. And
It's
I mean, there's
great.
just some wonderful stuff going on in that respect. But tonally, I love that the episode gets to go to a lot of different places. It
It
doesn't just
does.
play.
It does. And
Yeah.
honestly, this is like, I mean, I haven't seen all of Ray's work, obviously, but
Hmm.
there was something so raw about his performance in this episode. When he thinks that he's failed,
Yeah.
um, he was incredible. There was something that I hadn't seen before. Um, that he was so yeah, raw and vulnerable and angry, and like it was just a new layer that I hadn't seen, and I thought was really incredible. His performance was brilliant.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, there is something very kind of stripped down and
Mm,
bare almost,
yes.
especially in that final scene between the two of you. And when he walks away, the look on his face is unlike any look on his face I have seen in the
Mm,
past, 26 episodes or however many it's been
mm,
since the start of the series. And it was a really incredible moment. And it feels like the Ben who's walking away at that particular moment and getting ready to leap is, has changed in a lot of
yeah,
ways
I
and
totally
grown.
agree. Yeah, yeah. I think it's really special, and
Yeah.
Chris did a great job as well of capturing that and just letting him fly.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about on Secret History the opportunity that you and Ray had to rehearse some of those scenes almost like a
Mm,
play.
mm.
And in this episode, especially having to be on location, traveling, I imagine
There
it
was
made
no
time
such
feel
time.
compressed. Okay, that's what I was gonna, yeah.
Which was its own kind of, really fun challenge. It was so run and gun. We were just like chasing the daylight, trying to get everything done for the finite amount of time we were there. And that brought a different energy again to like what we had in episode 6, where we were, you know, really dialed in and had all this time to explore. So I like both. I really kind of enjoyed both of these very different exercises.
Right. Sure. Yes. No, I totally understand that. I mean, it's like, again, you know, doing Shakespeare in front of 1,500 people is awesome, but being in like a black box with 80 people is awesome. You know, it's like,
Right.
give me either one.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. There's something about the way that the episode moves and the overall tension of the episode, and just, you know, having that kind of spy story and time being of the essence. It really does lend itself. That I would imagine that kind of shooting schedule lends itself to kind of getting that across. Did you ever feel like that there were moments in the episode or in, you know, during filming when you were sort of like, oh, I want one more pass at this, but there's just no time for it?
Oh
Or
yeah.
do you? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
How do you let go of that? Like, how do you just kind of, you know, say like, it's all right, you know, it is what it is.
I think trusting your director has plays a big part in that. I know that Chris isn't going to make us look unrehearsed or bad. You know, there's just no way. He wants this to be as good as it can be, same as us. And, you know, you don't necessarily get that with every director. But I feel like I'm in really good hands on this show. Like every director I've had it's actually only 2 so far where we're at in the airing of this season. It was Chris and Pamela, and both of them were just, I felt very safe. And even if I wanted to go again, if Chris says we got it, then we got it, you know, let's move on.
Yeah. Trust is such an important piece of the puzzle.
Huge.
You know, you talked earlier about being able to kind of come into this project and just feel welcomed and feel like, you know, a part of things and feel everybody was generous and there. When it comes to kind of giving that trust, is that something that comes easy to you when you walk into a project, or is it something that you're always a little nervous about and like, okay, like this is a part of the job, I got to do it? Do you have to kind of like push yourself towards it?
Yeah, you know, I was my answer changed while you were asking that question. I was like, no, I just trust instantly, and then I went, no, I don't. I don't. I don't. I'm
Right.
definitely dubious. You know, I'm a bit like sussing everybody out. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
is this a good space? And I only say that because I have had some experiences where we weren't in particularly good. Yeah. So, I think I can be a little bit nervous going in, and then once I settle.
Yeah. You know, obviously this is a more general question, but, you know, mentioning where there's sometimes you're not necessarily, you don't feel you're in the best of hands or whatnot. What do what do you do in that situation? Is it a situation for you that you feel like I'm going to do the best that I can, but I don't know if it's going to be my best?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
No, sorry. What was the or? Because that might
Oh,
be.
sorry. Or do you find yourself kind of maybe working to establish something, you know, establish a trust or establish a, you know, a better way of doing things? Do you kind of maybe, is there a way to kind of finesse the situation to get it so that it's more comfortable, or do you just kind of have to live with it as it is?
I think it depends on the situation, because you know, you can go in with the best of intentions. I always do. And then if I feel like something's not going right, maybe technically, maybe it's a we're not vibing thing, or whatever it is, I'll always try to work it out before we shoot. You know, go,
Yeah.
okay, can we just pause for a second and rework this, or just how about this? Like, you don't want to go into a situation with problems and no answers. You know, you want to go in
Yeah.
and say, well, here's how we could maybe make this better. Because if you go in and you just complain, you're not, and just say fix it, then you're not, that's not a collaboration. So I'll try to go in with solutions, and then if they're not received, then you just got to kind of make do, and you'll know pretty quickly if they're not open to it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, so to kind of start to wrap things up here, I'm so grateful for the time that you've given. I really appreciate it. But I do want to, not that I'm trying to be all actors studio on you or whatever, but what inspires you?
Oh, that's such a broad question. What inspires me? I mean, people. People inspire me. My son inspires me. My husband inspires me. My mum inspires me. You know, like the core people in my life, and also the people I work with. I draw a lot of inspiration from others, and myself. I'm starting to feel really comfortable with who I am, and that's a great feeling. And it, I don't know, it just encourages me to keep going, keep growing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What
Keep
inspires
asking what's
you?
next. Ooh. Yeah, my kids,
Yeah.
my spouse. Yeah. You know, I, as longtime listeners of this show will know, I did not have great role models growing up,
Right.
and I've had a lot of struggles, um and yeah, I think it's such a fine line, because you don't want it to sound egotistical, but I agree with you. I think, you know, you kind of have to inspire yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, my sobriety inspires me,
Mine
my
too.
decision to, yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that question, genuinely, what's next, is so inspiring to me. You
Absolutely.
know, and I think in it, especially like working almost exclusively in theater, as I have for, you know, the bulk of the last 20 years, it's, to me, there's something about that finite amount of time, you know, that
Mm,
8 to 12 weeks that you might have working on a show, sometimes more depending on the run or
yeah.
whatever. It's like it's gotten easier and easier for me to ask that question the older I get, because
Mm,
it's like, I can enjoy this, I can be in the moment for this, but boy, whatever's next, you know, it'll be better. That's the hope, right? And so
yeah,
that to
absolutely.
me is inspiring. I think the idea that
Yeah.
whatever's next, you can, you know, because you'll have grown from this experience, and now the next one can be even more meaningful,
God, I love that.
impactful.
I do. That's awesome.
Oh,
Oh, well,
thank you.
thanks for having me.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely. Thank you
lovely.
so much for being here. I had so much fun, and I'm so thrilled that people are going to get to see more of Hannah, and more of Hannah and Ben's journey, like, together, but also just more of Hannah's journey, because there's points in this episode where I feel like we see a someone who has matured,
Mm,
even over last time, but without losing that sense of play,
mm,
which I think is so lovely about her. And I think that
yeah.
it's the thing that, yeah, can really, you know, just keep people coming back, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens over the course of these next 5 episodes.
Mm,
Um, so yeah.
me too. Let's have it. It's going to be
Yeah,
really
right.
fun.
Awesome. Eliza, will you come back?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so,
Thanks,
so
Ben.
much. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to having you back on to talk more whenever Hannah comes back to Quantum Leap.
Sounds good. Okay. Bye.